Adi, good to see you. How has the last few weeks been?
How's the last few weeks been? Good question. It's been interesting. I'll say it again, like I said the other day, it's been a very interesting period. It's been quite challenging at times. It's also given me a chance to see, I think, certain parts of the club in a different light, which has been a wonderful add-on, if you like. It's been interesting watching all these people in your field trying to pronounce my surname, especially on Sky yesterday, which tickled my kids and my partner, but that was interesting. But I suppose it's football, and you know, as I said, we all woke up, thankfully, on the Sunday after Birmingham in a better place, and there's been a nice, vibrant feel around the club since then.
How would you like people to pronounce it? How is it properly pronounced?
It's Viveash, and it's Adi, not Addy. But it took me back to when I was playing, if I'm honest, when I was warming up on a pitch, and everybody had a different interpretation. My teammates were usually falling about laughing, but it was a nice sub thing, yeah.
You mentioned there about the challenges. What's been the most challenging thing during this period?
Well, you've got a group of players that, you know, are in a really good place. Their camaraderie and their togetherness is as good as probably I've seen in the dressing room and away from the club. And then you're trying to navigate sort of muddy waters when some things can derail that. And obviously when you have the impact of certain situations that have gone on in the last few weeks and decisions made and how they view it's quite challenging. So, you know, and every player's different. We've got a lot of foreign players as well that probably don't really understand as much. So that's the intriguing bit when you speak to players one-to-one and you work out that they're quite articulate, this group. Some of them just brush it off and, you know, want to get out there, and others are a little bit different. They need to try and process and work through it, and I think that's been quite challenging. But what you have got here is an incredible group of staff, like real top staff in all their fields, and they each play their role, and they don't really understand that at times, but they do. Those little conversations you have in corridors, or Dark's a kit man when he's clearing up the room and chatting to players, it's invaluable, and they're all really, really good at it, and there's a real clear message, and I've found that really interesting, and I say quite humbling, I think, to see staff go about their work, their due diligence, really, really well in a challenging situation.
And on the staff, obviously 2 staff down as well, effectively, and Andy Miser's come in. Just how big a help has he been?
Yeah, I mean, Andy and me obviously worked together at Chelsea. You know, he played for Chelsea's first team as a schoolboy. You know, he's been in elite environments. You know, he's developed elite players. But this is a different situation. But he's very calm. He's a very calm man. He knows me inside out. It doesn't take a long time to get up to speed with how I work. So it's sort of seamless, if you like. It's been great to be on the training ground with him again. Made us both feel a bit younger, I think. So that's been quite nice. But he's a very talented coach, but he's an even better man. And that was important, that during this period, that I needed somebody that I knew I could trust, and I would sort of see how I just see the game in certain ways, certainly on a training ground, and you're just trying to add little bits. You're not trying to reinvent the wheel. I'm not here to do that. Been coaching here since the first day of pre-season, so you know, I'm not trying to show the players that I'm something else. They're probably just seeing a different side to me, and that, I think that's been quite interesting for a few of them as well.
And fans have really come out in appreciation and support of you during this time as well. And I just wonder, one, if you're aware of that level of support that you've had and appreciation that you've had, and 2, how you found that. Because I know last time we spoke, you said you're not really one for the spotlight and the limelight, but there's clearly the fan base has really taken to you more so probably in the last couple of weeks, given the situation that you found yourself in and how you've operated in that situation.
Yeah, I was still able to go and get my lunch in Yarm yesterday without anybody bothering me until I'd finished, so That hasn't really changed. I'm very appreciative of it. Yes, I've been made aware of it. It's very humbling. I'm just somebody who has had an ability to help develop players, and I love coaching. I like working with players on the grass. I had 11 months out of the game, so I've certainly cherished every moment of this last week, because it's been really, really interesting, and I've really enjoyed it. And when you're out of the game, those are the times you miss on the training ground with players, trying to get that missing 1% out of them. And I've really enjoyed that. But yeah, it's humbling, and I'm working at a fantastic club. I'll say it again, work at a fantastic club for an outstanding chairman, and the hierarchy here, trying to push the club into that area that you're in a position that you can try and get back to the promised land. That's the goal. They don't hide away from it. I think you've got to be a certain kind of individual to work here and play here, if I'm honest, and because that continued pressure is there. Yeah, interesting. I'm thankful to them. I really hope that they can get behind their team on Saturday. It's another really important game. We go into 3 games in 7 days. The championship, the merry-go-round starts again. But it's a massive game, and if they can work off that feed of that crowd against Birmingham, the players and fans together, that's what's going to be needed, because it's a difficult away game, as any is in the championship.
And a lot of talk about who might be next and those sorts of things. But firstly, what about your time here, your future here?
Well, my time here, as I say, I've enjoyed every minute of it. I work for a great club. My full focus has to be, and has been, on Oxford and the players, and I ain't got time to think about what else could happen or where things are going. I just try and do my job to the best of their ability, and that is where the focus is. It's 24 hours in police custody, I said earlier, but that's the reality. It's been interesting, it's been challenging, but you can't take your eye off that. The focus has to, we're going away from home. I'm going up against a coach who's managed 1,000 odd games. Gary's a very talented person, and they're in a different predicament, Oxford, but he will have them right on the money. There's no doubt about that, and we need to be there as well. So if I lose 1% of focus, it's not really going to help the players or the process or the football club. So tunnel vision, fully focused on the weekend, and trying to go there and get 3 points, as simple as that.
Obviously, you are a vastly experienced coach, and you've witnessed a lot in the game.
How old do you mean? Is that right?
No, not at all. Not at all. Have you ever been to Sweden?
Yeah, I've been on holiday to Sweden. I went there when Glenn Otter was our manager at Swindon. We went there on a pre-season tour. It was very interesting. Lovely country. Very nice in the summer. Brian McDermott, who I worked with at Reading, he managed in Sweden. Obviously, I was fortunate to work with Mr. Gyökeres at Coventry for 3 very interesting years with him. And we had a couple of other players on loan from Sweden. Yeah.
Very good answer. Obviously, Kim Hellberg is a name that's been widely expected to be the next man in charge. I just wonder, have you ever come across him? Have your paths ever crossed?
No.
On to Oxford then. And like you said, they are a team they have a very different challenge on their hands, and a team that you once had a very short spell at. Am I right in saying that? On loan when you were a player?
Yeah, went on loan twice when Ian Atkins was the manager. Yeah, in League Two. Interesting time. Went from Reading to there. Yeah, just to play games, if you like. I enjoyed it. Yeah, played in the middle of a back 3. Beat Charlton in the cup away. They were a bottom end Premier League team. We were League Two. So some nice memories, yeah. We had some good results there with Cov, and hopefully this is the same on Saturday.
And in terms of the squad, obviously the international break brought about some really proud moments for quite a few players. I just wanted to highlight Alfie Jones, who obviously made his debut for Canada, Sonji Hansen, who made headlines with Curacao and their qualification for the World Cup. 2 brilliant moments for both of those players. I'm sure you will have been congratulating them and proud of their progress.
Yeah, there's been some really outstanding things go on over the international break. And fantastic, yeah. Curacao qualifying for the World Cup, it's beggars belief, but they've done tremendously well. Sonji obviously played majority of both the games, so brilliant for him. He's very excited, yeah. Alfie, a debut for Canada, going into them hosting games in the World Cup. It's a great time to get in the squad. Man of the match performance, but we know Alfie's quality, that's why we worked hard to get him here. Riley also was back in the Australian squad, played in the second game. Aiden back with the USA, beating Uruguay 5-1, I think it was. Not many teams do that. So it's been an interesting. Sfera played twice for the 21s. David had don't ask David anything in German over the next few days. But, they're in the playoffs. He got to see elite talent playing against him. I think that's what his message was this morning. It was quite interesting to see those names. A few of them we came up against in development, and now they've gone on to be superstars. I told him, you're lucky Musiala didn't play. It's been great. Look, they're coming back in dribs and drabs. They've been back in different times. It's been good to see a few, and we've still got a couple more tomorrow. And then obviously we finalise our final plans into the weekend.
And just on that last one, the squad, how are they? Dale Fry in particular, how is he?
Yeah, Dale, obviously there'll be a decision on Dale tomorrow. A couple of others, there's a couple of knocks around. It's usual, you come back in after a few days off, training's intense, a couple of little bangs here and there. We're expecting people to be okay, but there's a couple that we have to monitor and see where they're at. Matty Target's trained really, really well after the problems he had at Birmingham, recovered really well from that. George Edmondson is going to be out. The hip bang he had has not settled, unfortunately. We need that to settle down before George can come back in, and we're expecting Alpha Kante to resume training next week, which is great. We've missed him, he's been out a while, but that should give us a bit of a lift as well.
Appreciate your time, Eddie, thank you.
Hi Eddie, hello. Have you had reassurances that you'll be part of things going forward, whoever comes in? I know a lot of fans would still like to see you here.
As I said, all I've focused on is the Oxford game, and that's where I'm at. I spoke to the owner, asked me if I would take training this week, look after things for him, and the game against Oxford on the Sunday after Birmingham. Of course, I said yes, because as I spoke earlier, the admiration I have for him and for people at the club. I thought that was important to try and keep some continuity and give that steady ship. I haven't thought or spoke to anybody about anything else apart from what our plans are for Oxford at the weekend.
And if he speaks to you after this game and says, do you mind taking it again for Coventry, that'll be all right?
We'll have to see if that's the conversation that we have. It really is 24 hours at a time. You know that. You're monitoring things closely about certain situations, individuals, time frames. We're just focused on training one day at a time, getting to Saturday, and as I said, hopefully putting on a performance that's good enough to get us 3 valuable points at Oxford, which will be very difficult.
And have you enjoyed this taste of being head coach, and has it made you think, I'd quite like to do this permanently one day, maybe not here, maybe not now, but one day I could see myself doing this? Or has it made you think, I don't want to be doing this all the time?
Well, it's not as though I haven't never been a head coach, you know what I mean? Obviously in development, I know it's development, but working at Chelsea with that pressure, 18s and 21s, you're doing 4 of these a week in that role, so it's not like it's the first time I've done things like this, but I've got no interest in being an old school manager, and I would mean that with all the respect in the world to people who want to manage a whole football club and run the recruitment and do things like that. So a head coach is a head coach, it's totally different. Have things surprised me over the last few days? Not really. Did I think certain things were easier than they would? Possibly. But it's been very interesting for me. You never say never, and it's all about opportunities. But as I said, I came here after a long period out. The club put a lot of faith in me to come here, and I like to think that you try and repay that. I'm a pretty loyal man, to be fair. If you look at my record, 9 years at Chelsea, 7 years at Coventry. I'm a loyal man, and I think that I've got an ability, like I said, to help people develop players, win football matches. If that's what the powers that be are looking when things move forward, so be it. But that's a conversation for another day, and I'm certainly looking forward to the weekend, and I'll enjoy tomorrow's training, that final preparation, because you start to get the buzz, and then we'll stand on the touchline and see how it feels.
All right, thanks, Eddie.
Hi there. I just wonder, kind of in the run-up to the Birmingham game, there'll have been a lot of kind of uncertainty, and naturally some of that will have dripped through to the squad, you know, the managerial upheaval. Has it helped kind of in the run-up to this game, kind of everyone knows where they stand, that you're in charge, kind of, you know, and things are bubbling away in the background, but for now it's kind of you?
Yeah, you'd have to ask the players whether it's helped. I mean, there's obviously a lot of friendly banter when we first came back together, because I was still here. So you know, they're footballers. You know, I've been in those dressing rooms, and I would have been surprised if they wouldn't have said it. But I'd hope that has been the case. Yeah, like I say, I brought Andy in because I knew that side of things would be seamless as well, and you know, he's just fitted into the background lovely, and they've been great with him because they're a really good group for that. There's a lot of humility in that dressing room, so that's been quite nice. I think if you ask the senior ones, I'm sure that the fact that there is some continuity, some constant messages, some working week in very similar ways to what it was before, that's a plus, I think, in these situations. But really, first and foremost, they're thinking about getting a really good performance at Oxford and trying to add another 3 points, which will add on to this start that is, as I said it after Birmingham, has put you in a position where you start to think about what it's going to take over 31 games to be around the areas. You know, it's a very congested league, you know that, we're all seeing it. You know, 2 results the other way, you could be out of the top 10. It's crazy really, but that's how the Championship is at the moment. You know, with all the knowledge in this room, you probably, like me, don't really think it will stay like that, but at the moment that is how it is. That they've just got to focus on trying to produce a performance that's good enough, and ultimately that's what they're going to be judged on moving forward. You know, now I don't know what players are like, whether they, you know, some of them will be doing a lot of research and watching all your interviews and things in the news about etc., because it affects them, and that affects their livelihoods and chances of being a main player for Middlesbrough in the future. And we all know when this happens that it affects certain players in a good way, and it hinders other players in a different way, because everybody works slightly differently. So the longer we can keep the players in a really level mindset, I think is very important for the club and also for whatever happens in the future.
And that congestion kind of in the table, and the fact you are kind of up at the right end, all the more important to get a positive result this weekend.
Yeah, I think, well, every game gets slightly bigger, doesn't it? You know, people start talking about, you know, games further on, because those teams are, you know, have started well as well. If you look at the next 4 or 5 games, there's certainly very challenging fixtures, you know, but none harder than Oxford away, in my opinion. As I said, Gary's a very experienced manager, so many games, been in this position before, won't panic. You know, they've had a couple of weeks since their last performance against West Brom where they'll be looking to make things right. He'll certainly have worked tremendously hard on the training ground, because that's what he does. And we've got to expect the best version of them, but they've got to expect the best version of us. So, you know, if we bring our A game, if you like, and our players turn up and perform and work as hard as they did against Birmingham, and they have that togetherness, and we certainly create a bit more freedom with the ball, then it'll be a difficult challenge for them as well.
Thank you.
Eddie, good to see you. You've mentioned a couple of times now, while you've been in front of us, how much you're enjoying it. What is it specifically, what particularly you're enjoying about the current role?
I think, you know, sometimes when you're working as an assistant coach, you obviously have certain parts of sessions that maybe is what you're working on. But when you're the one who has to try and set how the training looks, then you can sort of be a little bit more free with certain elements of your work. And I think the players probably feel that. You certainly have to, if you stand in front of them, you have to give a little bit of a different message. They have to see a different side. just a slightly different change, that there's that calm authority. And I think that's the same with the staff. You know, the staff were tremendous in that very difficult period. You know, Friday evening into Saturday. You know, it was a tough period, but you know, it was just about keeping everything calm. And I think, you know, when you stand in front of players, there's nothing really prepares you for that. You just got to be confident in your own ability, and I suppose that's where the white hair and the years of experience do actually add a little bit. But it's still how you actually talk to them and get that message across. As I said before, Birmingham, I saw that. I felt that they were in a bubbly mood. They were really looking forward to playing in front of the home fans again. I think they felt that it was probably going to be turbocharged, and it was, but they took it in the right way, turbocharged. So they led that. The fans were incredible, and you just had that wonderful atmosphere which culminated in 3 months. Now, I don't know what it would have been like if it would have gone the other way. Thankfully it didn't. But it's certainly interesting. I find it interesting. You sort of work out, you learn a little bit more about yourself, I suppose, even in these, you know, fledgling years of being around the game. I suppose I think players always surprise you. Maybe things you do or how you act in certain situations probably surprise yourself, and that's been quite a nice thing for me to work out. You know, I'm sure it certainly felt very small, the technical area. I've always thought it was bigger, but it certainly felt quite small, especially in those last 10 minutes. But yeah, you find out more about yourself, and I think that's a big message, and that's been quite a nice takeaway from it.
And from a player's perspective, what are they seeing, feeling, experiencing under what you've been doing with them? I know only a short term, but how Rob was doing things. What differences are there out there?
Yeah, it's not so much it's a difference between one individual and the other. It's just that you're probably, maybe your detail and the way you express things or the way you coach is slightly different when you're leading the majority of sessions. I think that's probably what it is. It's finding the balance between them not thinking, well, you've changed from being one individual to another. It's not that. It's just probably the detail. The detail that you're giving at that precise time is the detail, because it's, say, working on a tactical element into the game at the weekend. So you're trying to get the players to sing off a hymn sheet that maybe is slightly different. Not that you'll be able to work it out easy, but the players be able to feel it. Well, yeah, that's hearing me in a different light, and probably a couple have mentioned that to me, but I think it's been quite interesting for them. And I've certainly enjoyed that element of it, because I'm on the grass, I'm coaching, and that's where I feel more at home than sitting here in this room. But there we go.
No, we can. You mentioned the togetherness, the Birmingham, not just the game, but everything around it. You know, the build-up to it. How much did you feel that?
Yeah, I mean, obviously when I got to the ground, you know, it was only a couple of hours before kick-off that we realised what was taking shape at the game, and the fact that we were obviously going to lead it. But as soon as the first player walked through the change room, look, it's good this, because a bit of banter at my expense is great, because that means I knew that they were relaxed. I think they've had to come in and been in trepidation at the fact that, you know, their head coach is not stood there, and you know, there's a stand-in like in comedy, say. I think there would have been, you know, I'd been more concerned, but I wasn't, because I had a few jokes at my, which is great, and I love that, because I knew they were ready. But just little conversations. I said it after. You can just hear conversations in the dressing room. There was a few that were talking about events, of course. But when you had your message, you know, my message to them at hour and a half before kick-off, and you know, a little presentation, but the message was just continuing the theme of what all the work had gone in. It'd all been done. It was just about making sure that they knew about the connection between them and the supporters, and how they had to get them on side very, very quickly in the game. And I felt they did that, because I thought we started the game really well. So they understood the importance of the game. They embraced the challenge of that. You know, they're a great group to work with. I said it, but they certainly went up in my estimations. They really did after that game. It was quite special. It was special to stand there, as I said. It was special to hear the fans and really know when the players needed the lift. I think the fans, very well educated up here, but they moved with the flow of the game, I thought. And that hasn't always been the case this season, I don't think. I think in certain games, maybe they haven't been given enough to feel that they move with the game, but I felt they were excellent in terms of that, and that's how it sounded, that's how it felt. It was pretty special.
Thanks.
If and when a new boss comes in, Adi, and kind of says to you, okay, what am I getting myself in for here? What would your key messages be to him?
I can't answer that because I don't know what that, if their conversation's going to go on, what is going to be said, who an individual is. I don't know. All I think about at the moment is we come out of here. We've got a little bit more work to do. Obviously, we're making sure that everybody's okay. We see how tomorrow is in the morning, and we hopefully have as fit a squad as we can have available. We roll down to Oxford. Whatever happens, if the next 24 hours bring a different scenario, then I could answer you that question. But I can't really answer that when I don't really know when, how, where it's going to happen. So,
Sorry, I guess what I was trying to get across was, normally when this type of upheaval happens at a football club, there's a mess that needs sorting out. It definitely doesn't feel like that at the minute. That whatever happens, whatever direction the club chooses to go in, it's starting from a position of strength, which often you don't get when this type of thing happens.
Yeah, no, well, I can answer that because on Monday we trained and the session was fantastic. It really was. Real high level, lots of intensity, loads of intent, some wonderful football, some great goals, some really good defending. I said to him after, whoever gets the opportunity to take this job, what a job to come into. And I said everybody would be, and I believe this, I do, but people would be bending over backwards to come in here. Yeah. So I agree with your point. There's other championship teams, without any disrespect, that people going into those jobs have got a real difficult task straight away, and that is usually how managerial things turn around. You're right. This isn't that case. No, someone is extremely fortunate, and if they can jump on the back of this group of dynamic, really engaging, very talented, driven players, then the future is really bright. I told them the future for them is really bright. I think it was the right time. I didn't say it after Birmingham. I thought it was the right time to say it, and I said it on Monday because I really felt the level of that training was it was top, and that is what somebody excited me, and that's what somebody's got to look forward to. That really is how I would answer that, I think.
Yeah. Just on one of the players in particular, you touched on Riley being away in the international break. He's someone who's obviously, by his own admission, had a really frustrating time, and he obviously gave an interview over in Australia kind of spelling out just how tough the whole recovery process has been for him and all of that. I mean, it feels like if you can get Riley McGree back to anywhere near his best, he's got so much to offer at championship level, because we've kind of seen that, hasn't he? That he can be a really big player in the rest of this season. Now, hopefully, all of that's behind him.
Yeah, he was. I told him on day one we came in, he was always somebody that would annoy me when he played against our teams, because his timing of runs through. I worked with somebody similar, Jamie Allen at Coventry, who had that ability to arrive through the space. I think Riley's as good as I've seen at that. There's a lot of talk around certain midfielders in the Championship that do it. Yeah. He definitely does it. And it's been a really difficult period for him. He was exceptional in pre-season. He was probably the most standout player, I'd say, in the first couple of weeks when we first came in, and we were like, well, this, obviously I knew how good he was. Rob had coached against him, obviously. So we'd all seen him, but to see him up close and operate, how he finds space, technical ability, lovely, goals and assists. He can score goals, that's the thing. So getting somebody else from midfield where you get goals is obviously valuable. But it just then has been very stop-start for him. I was more frustrated for him than anybody in the Birmingham game, because unfortunately when we had to change shape through the injury, it affected Riley the most, because he'd started the game fantastic. But when you're left with 5 centre-halves off and 5 full-backs playing centre-half, it was very difficult. But I did feel for him, because in the first 20 minutes I thought Birmingham found it very difficult to cope with him. And he was very elusive, and that's certainly how we envisaged the game when we built up to it. So yeah, he could end up being a key player, along with lots of many other players at the football club that, as in anything, hopefully they're looking at the moment going, well, it's about continuing adding points, as I said, but they'll also have another eye on the fact that, in the future they need to impress, first and foremost, the football club. At the end of the day, the football club pay their wages, so their duty is to play for the football club. But if they churn out 2 more excellent performances, say now, or 3 more, or 1 more, and somebody else comes in who, will know quite a lot about them, but it's different knowing than working, and the Riley is definitely one of them. But we just, at the moment, we've got to try and concentrate on helping Riley consistently train to a level, and then be able to be available to play matches on a consistent basis, because the more games he plays, the more match fitness he gets, the more benefit he is to Middlesbrough Football Club, and certainly I agree with you, then that will help the club certainly achieve more points. Yes, agree with that.
Thank you. You talked there really about kind of a lot of the differences between being an assistant coach and now being the head coach. I guess one of the big things, while I'm sure you had input on team selection, actually making that final decision, it will now be on you. How is that, particularly with such a strong squad and so many tough decisions to make?
Yeah, thanks for that. That's interesting. Yeah, I mean, look, obviously I'm not afraid of it. There will be some difficult decisions, like there always is. As you said, it's a really strong squad. There's a lot of players that expect to play. I think that's the words. Expect to play in their own heads, and I quite like that. You don't want people that are happy to just sit down. You want people to be saying to you, staring you in the face and going, you should be picking me. The work this week in training has certainly given me food for thought. Every game is different. Having players away, obviously, coming back, long travel, etc. Is there any knocks? Is there any fatigue? We've obviously got to say we've got really good staff here, certainly medical staff, very good at their jobs. And there's a lot of conversation, so it's not just picking a team on, say, everybody being here training fully all week, and you also have, I'm preparing for Oxford, but the football club's got 3 games in 7 days, and you have to, that also has to be in your mind. Whether you're the person selecting the teams for 3 games, doesn't matter. You still have to have that view, and when you have got a strong squad, then you certainly have to try and get those key decisions right. But affecting the game from the bench, this game might not be the same. Birmingham was a game where we knew you had injury problems. We knew we were going in. We definitely knew we were going to lose 1 player, possibly 2, during the game. That's where you have to be prepared at times to take a gamble. You don't want to be doing that all the time. You don't want to be making 4 subs all the time. You don't want to be making 3 subs at half time. You want to be trying to pick a team that can get you into the latter stages of games, but you also know that you have a very talented group of players that can come off the bench and affect games at any moment, and that definitely is the case here when everybody's fit and available.
Yeah, and something else that you mentioned earlier was how obviously every player is an individual and a human, and they'll react to situations in different ways. As obviously you'll have spoken to them anyway as a coach, of course you will, but as head coach, do you kind of take on more responsibility on that front in terms of perhaps interacting with certain players a bit more and making sure they are getting through the situation?
Yeah, I think as an assistant coach, I think you do that more. I think you're generally around the players all the time, and putting fires out sometimes, talking to them about disappointment at other times, maybe pulling them one-to-one and doing some tactical research with them, going back over their clips, certain situations, getting them to talk. I think that's a big thing about modern football. I think modern footballers in a room full of men. Sometimes they struggle. You get them one-to-one, you can free them up. Certainly we've had some really good meetings this week with units, etc., where the onus has been on the players to talk, because I like hearing what they feel. As I said, we've got an articulate group of players here, and that's been really interesting for me, that side. So you want them to be comfortable with the process, what you're going through, what you're trying to do, certainly through this week, and certainly with the situation that they're in, the club's in. I think it's vitally important that they're heavily involved, and I've really enjoyed that. But as a head coach, you're probably picking and choosing the ones more selectively, I would say. And again, really, really lucky that the senior professionals at this football club are fantastic individuals as well as really, really good footballers. And they've certainly led the dressing room. I didn't have to say anything. They've led the dressing room in a really constructive way. And again, everybody pulling on the same hymn sheet to keep this ship just sailing on an even keel going into the weekend.
Just the last one from me, we'll run through the injuries, but is there any update on Darragh Lenihan and where he is at the moment, how far along he might be?
No, Darragh's obviously quite a bit away from where he'll be at a stage of training, so he obviously unfortunately has had different injury problems through a very sustained period, sadly. And certainly when you're talking to individuals, then Darragh's somebody that even in my assistant role, that we went and had a couple of walks, and it was important. I mean, you've got to try, and if you've been in that position through your career, I broke my leg twice, was out for nearly 2 years, you can sort of understand. And I really enjoyed getting to know Darragh the person, I've got to be honest. We didn't really talk about football, we just walked for 40 minutes and talked about his family and life and how you deal with these ups and downs. And as we know, life's changed. And certainly a form of mental health in football, I think, is really missed. It was when I played, it's definitely missed now. So, again, the care here, that when you talk about why it's a special club, somebody asked me that, the care here is really special to see. The care for players, the care for each other, the care for individuals. I think that's very special here. So, and I know Darragh feels that as he's going through a really difficult period, but he had a smile on his face when he was in the defenders meeting on Tuesday, so I took that at the moment he's a soldier, so he's got to keep going for his family. He's got young children, and hopefully he deserves the light to be shining brighter for him, certainly in the future. Yeah.
You said about mentioned soldiers there, and last season before you were here, we put 6 past Oxford away. I don't think any of us expected them to still be in the division, but they're real fighters, aren't they? They are. I mean, look, I think in the Championship, I think that the fact of where they are as a club and it's built a little bit on that. I think they're overachievers, aren't they? I think in the Championship standings, they've got some really good players. They certainly use the loan market very well. And as I say, they've got an astute and detailed and experienced manager. So, you expect nothing else for a difficult game. Yes, I saw the game last year. I remember when you went down there. And if anybody needs to know any or have any reminders, you have to look at the start of that game. You're 1-0 down. It was extremely difficult, and obviously you turned it round, and then there was some really good attacking play and some good goals. So a really tough away game. You have to look at their results against some of the best teams in the Championship. Certainly the most attacking, potent threats have found it difficult to win there. So under no illusions, players are under no illusions. Constant messages about we need to bring our A game. We need to be on top of the game with and without the ball. But like I said, if we are that, then they'll certainly be worried about us, and that is the level. You have to try and go to places anywhere in the Championship away from home, and as quickly as you can stamp your authority on the game, that can create a different mindset in opposition. They'll be trying to do it to us. They're at home, but we'll be trying to do it to them, and I think that's the important thing, I suppose, from it. Difficult fixture, but a difficult fixture for them as well. And you're saying about mindset, looking back at our last away game, that goal by Luke Ayling,
in injury time. That felt possibly quite a big goal in our season. Obviously, lots of things have happened since, but still building on that.
Yeah, I mean, it was an even bigger goal when the 3 points against Birmingham get added. Yeah, it makes it an incredible point, really. 4 from the 2 games. If you don't beat Birmingham, you're sort of going, well, yeah, okay, we got a point. Never say die, 10 men, but it might have felt like a missed opportunity because, with all due respect to Leicester, I think that's a game that we should have had 3 points in. And I thought we played pretty well in the first half until the moment, and those moments that have gone against us a little bit. That was another one. But again, that's the character of the group I'm talking about, the adversity, and we certainly, away from home, it's something that the teams that are going to be, at the top end of this league towards the end of the season will be winning a lot of matches away from home. And at the moment, we probably need to just shift that a little bit. Good points away at Southampton, at Leicester, some of the better teams, Preston in the circumstances that it came. But generally, away from home, you have to have a good winning record to be where you want to be come the business end. And that's something that has been talked about. It's something that we want to try and get back onto, and hopefully that is what happens on Saturday.
And I think it's something you've mentioned before, that we've been taking full allocations, so we sold out again. And also, if we go back to Watford where we were beaten, but you were talking about the fans, the way the fans react, and the fans stayed behind the team. That can be important again in a 3-sided stadium at Oxford.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's incredible, and a big thank you to them. Getting them engaged in the game, look, away from home, they're incredible anyway. But getting them engaged really quickly, hearing them and 3 sides quiet or 2 sides quiet would be amazing. But we certainly are very thankful for that trip. It is a big trip. We know we're going to make it as well. But for them to do it, early coach journeys, etc., getting back late, it is fantastic. And I think if they keep working as hard as they're doing, as fans, and I mean that with journeys, with giving up weekends, with probably getting a bit of stick from their missuses and suffering a bit, although they probably want to get out of the house. But it is, those sorts of things we don't forget about. And I think if the players, that's what I'm talking about when I talked about dovetailing with each other. I think if they keep making those sacrifices, and the players and staff here keep making the other sacrifices, then the commitment, the hard work, that should be the least, because they're doing that commitment to get on those buses, to get on those trains, to drive down, add to the quality. It's a powerful message, and I do believe that come the end of the season it will be a really powerful message. Yeah.